Blood dripped from Sarah's split lip as she stumbled through the alley, her torn dress catching on splintered wood. Behind her, Aldrich Crow's laughter echoed off the saloon walls like a death rattle. "You can't run from what you owe me, girl." Her bare feet slapped against mud. 20 yards, 10, the street so close. A gunshot cracked the night air. Sheriff Conk Grant spun toward the sound, hand flying to his holster. A woman's scream, choked and desperate, pulled him into the darkness. He found them in seconds. Crow's thick fingers wrapped around her throat. 2 men flanking him with rifles. "Let her go!" Grant's voice cut like iron. "In this town, the law still means something." Crow released her with a shove. 48 hours. Sheriff, then I'm taking back what's mine." Sarah collapsed into Grant's arms, unconscious. As he caught her, moonlight glinted off a silver ring on her finger, a ring he'd seen before on a dead man's daughter. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Along with the city you're watching from now, let's continue with the story. Tom Grant's house stood at the edge of Redemption Springs, like a monument to loneliness. Inside, dust gathered on furniture that hadn't moved in a decade. Mary's sewing basket sat untouched by the window. Her favorite coffee cup remained in the cupboard, too sacred to use. Every morning, Grant fried a single egg, drank cold coffee standing up, and chewed day-old bread without tasting it. He'd been sheriff for 15 years. The last 10, he'd lived like a ghost in his own home. Now, a stranger lay unconscious in his guest room, and for the first time in years, the house felt different, alive maybe, or just less dead. Sarah woke with a gasp, eyes wild, scanning the unfamiliar room, when Grant appeared in the doorway with water and bandages. She pressed herself against the headboard, arms raised defensively. "Easy now," he said, setting everything on the dresser near the door. "You're safe here." She said nothing, just stared at him like a cornered animal calculating escape routes. Grant backed away. "I'll leave this here. Door's not locked. You can leave any time you want." He spent that first night sitting in the hallway outside her room, around midnight. He heard her crying soft, broken sounds that reminded him of wounded birds. Then she screamed a single word, "Papa." Grant's chest tightened. That word carried the weight of a child's terror. By the second morning, he found the food gone but the bed unused. When he checked, Sarah had slept curled beneath it, like she'd learned to hide from monsters in the dark. The third morning, she emerged. Her hair, chopped short and uneven, framed a face mapped with bruises. She moved to the kitchen without speaking and began making coffee with shaking hands. Grant watched her pour 2 cups. She set one in front of him, then retreated to the far side of the table. They drank in silence. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. Something in between a truce, perhaps. Sarah's gaze drifted to the photograph on the wall. Mary, young and smiling, stood beside Grant on their wedding day. "She was beautiful," Sarah whispered, her first words in 3 days. Grant nodded, throat tight. "She was 20 years ago." Another little girl had stood in the same kitchen. Sarah McKenna, 8 years old, with long braided hair, and her father's badge pinned proudly to her dress. Sheriff James McKenna had laughed, tousling her hair. "Someday you'll wear a real one, sweetheart." That girl had learned to shoot tin cans off fence posts, had ridden her father's horse bareback through desert sunset, had believed the world was good because her papa made it so. Now Sarah touched her own reflection in the dark window, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed woman staring back. The girl she'd been was dead. This stranger wearing her skin had survived things that girl never could have imagined. On the fourth morning, Sarah left her room without being called. She found Grant fumbling with the coffee pot, cursing under his breath at the ground spilling across the counter. Without a word, she took over. Her hands, though scarred and trembling, moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, a smell that hadn't graced this house in 10 years. Grant stood awkwardly, unsure whether to thank her or leave her alone. Sarah solved the problem by cracking eggs into a pan. She cooked breakfast like someone who'd learned to be useful, to earn her keep, to justify her existence. They ate together. The silence between them had shifted, again, less wary now, almost companionable. When Sarah glanced at Mary's photograph, something like understanding passed across her face. "You loved her very much," she said quietly. "Still do," Grant replied. "Love doesn't stop just because someone's gone." Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "No, it doesn't." That afternoon, Grant found Sarah standing at the corral fence, staring at the chestnut stallion, pacing inside. Dusty had been James McKenna's horse, wild-spirited, loyal, and absolutely untamable since his master's death 5 years ago. Grant had tried everything. The horse kicked, bit, and refused to let anyone near. "Careful," Grant called out. "That animal's meaner than a rattlesnake." But Sarah had already slipped through the fence rails. Grant's heart jumped into his throat. "Sarah, get back here." She ignored him. Dusty stamped his hooves, nostrils flaring, ears pinned back. The horse had sent 2 ranch hands to the doctor with broken ribs. Grant reached for the fence, ready to vault over and pull her out. Then Dusty stopped. The stallion's ears swiveled forward. He took one tentative step toward Sarah, then another. She stood perfectly still, one hand extended, palm up. "Easy, boy," she whispered. "It's me. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Dusty lowered his massive head and pressed it against Sarah's shoulder. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his mane. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Grant stared, dumbfounded. "That horse hasn't let anyone near him in 5 years. How did you—" "I'm good with animals," Sarah said quickly, pulling away from Dusty. But her voice wavered, and she wouldn't meet Grant's eyes. "Sarah." Grant's tone was gentle but firm. "You knew this horse before." She stroked Dusty's nose, her jaw tight. "Everyone knows horses." "Sheriff!" "Not like that. This was James McKenna's horse." The name hung in the air between them like smoke. Sarah's hand froze mid-stroke. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, so quietly Grant almost missed it, "I told you, I'm good with animals." But Grant had seen the truth in that embrace. Dusty remembered her, and she remembered him. Before Grant could press further, a sound made them both turn. Something small and white lay on the porch steps. Sarah's face went ashen. Grant reached it first. A cloth doll, child-sized, hung from a rope around its neck. Pinned to its chest was a note in crude handwriting. Return what's mine. You got full 8 hours left. Sarah's breathing quickened. He'll kill me. He always keeps his word. Nobody's killing anybody in my town, Grant said. But his mind was racing. Crow was escalating faster than he'd expected. You don't understand, Sarah's voice cracked. This isn't just about me. Then help me understand. They went inside. Sarah paced the kitchen like a caged animal, arms wrapped around herself. Finally, she spoke. 3 years ago, I came to Redemption Springs looking for work. A man promised me a teaching position, good pay, respectable. Her laugh was bitter. I was desperate, stupid. Grant remained silent, letting her continue. There was no teaching position, just debt. $2,000 they said I owed for transportation and housing. Work it off, they said. At the saloon? She spat the last word like poison. But the debt never goes down. They add interest, expenses, fines. You can never pay it. You can never leave. That's not legal, Grant said, fury rising in his chest. Legal doesn't matter when the law won't help you. Sarah's eyes met his, hard and knowing. But it's worse than that. Sheriff, I'm not the only one. There are others. Were others. Were. Some disappeared, bought and sold. I think I saw ledgers once when I cleaned Crow's office. Names, price, destinations. Mexico, California, places I'd never heard of. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He sells us, Sheriff, like cattle. The words hit Grant like a physical blow. How many? I don't know. Dozens, maybe. Over the years, Sarah's hands twisted together. The ones who complained too much or got too old or sick, they just vanished. New girls arrived to replace them. The cycle never stops. Grant's mind reeled. A trafficking ring. Here, in his town, under his nose, for years. Why didn't anyone report this? Sarah's expression was almost pitying. To who? The sheriff, who never came to check, the judge who signs off on debt collections, the reverend who preaches about fallen women getting what they deserve. She shook her head. Nobody cares what happens to women like me, Sheriff. We're already lost. You're not lost, Grant said firmly. And I care. We're going to stop this. How? It's Crow's word against mine. A respected businessman against a... She couldn't finish the sentence. Against a survivor. Grant finished. That's what you are, Sarah. A survivor, and survivors fight back. Grant spent the next morning in his office, pulling files from dusty cabinets that hadn't been opened in years. Missing persons reports. 8 women in 5 years, all marked with the same conclusion, left town voluntarily. Each report bore Judge Bartholomew Henderson's signature. Each investigation had been closed within days. No follow-up, no searches, just paperwork filed away and forgotten. Grant spread the documents across his desk, his gut churning. Rebecca Martinez, age 18, Julia Thornton, 23, names that should have mattered, lives that had been erased with a stroke of a pen. Deputy Lucas Martinez appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. You're in early, boss. Look at this. Grant pushed the files toward him. 8 women, all vanished. All cases closed by Henderson without investigation. Martinez scanned the papers, his expression darkening. Then he saw one name and went very still. Rebecca Martinez. That's my sister. Your sister's missing was 3 years ago." Martinez's voice was hollow. "She ran off with some traveling salesman, or so they told me. Henderson said there was nothing to investigate. Said she left a note. Did you see the note?" "No. Henderson said it was private. Family business." Martinez's jaw clenched. "I believed him. God help me. I believed him." Grant studied his deputy carefully. Martinez had been loyal for 8 years, but something in his reaction felt off. Too controlled, too careful. "Lucas, if there's something you need to tell me—" "There's nothing." Martinez set down his coffee, hand trembling slightly. "But Sheriff, be careful with this. Henderson's got powerful friends. So does Crow. You go poking around. You might not like what pokes back. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning." But Grant couldn't shake the feeling that his deputy knew more than he was saying. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. At 2 a.m, she heard it, not imagination this time, real footsteps. On the porch, Sarah was out of bed in seconds, pressing herself against the wall beside the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd learned to recognize the sound of men coming to hurt her. She crept down the hallway toward Grant's room. "Sheriff," she whispered urgently. "They're here." Grant woke instantly, years of frontier law enforcement kicking in. He grabbed his gun from the nightstand and followed Sarah's gaze toward the front of the house. Glass shattered. 3 shadows poured through the window. Grant fired twice. One man went down screaming. Sarah didn't freeze. She grabbed the shotgun from above the mantel and fired into the darkness. The recoil nearly knocked her over, but her aim was true. Another intruder collapsed. The third man lunged at Grant. They crashed into furniture, grappling for the gun. A shot went wild, splintering wood. Sarah swung the shotgun like a club, cracking it across the attacker's skull. He crumpled. Then she smelled smoke. Fire licked up the kitchen curtains, spreading faster than seemed possible. Someone had thrown a lit lamp through the back window. "We have to get out," Sarah shouted. Grant stumbled to his feet, blood streaming from his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. They barely made it to the porch before flames consumed the kitchen. The wounded intruders had vanished into the night. Grant and Sarah stood in the yard, watching the house burn. The fire brigade wouldn't arrive in time to save much. Already, the roof was catching. Grant stared at the flames, and for the first time since Mary's death, tears rolled down his face. Not from pain, though his shoulder screamed, from loss. Again, inside that house were Mary's things, her photographs, her wedding dress, the last physical pieces of her that existed in this world, and they were turning to ash. Sarah stood beside him, her own face streaked with soot and tears. She wanted to comfort him, but didn't know how, so she simply stayed, bearing witness to his grief. When the fire finally died to embers near dawn, Mrs. Abigail Stone appeared with bandages and a firm expression. The elderly shopkeeper had been awake, had seen the smoke, and came prepared. "Don't you dare argue with me, Tom Grant," she said, cleaning his wound with practiced efficiency. "You're both coming to my place until we sort this mess out." But Grant shook his head. "Can't. Crow's deadline is tomorrow night. I need to keep Sarah somewhere he can't find her. Then I'll hide her," Mrs. Stone said. My root cellar's got a hidden room. Nobody knows about it but me and the good Lord." Sarah and Grant looked at each other. Finally, Sarah nodded, "Just until the sheriff can figure something out." That afternoon, as Mrs. Stone led Sarah away, Grant made his way to Judge Henderson's office. He needed a warrant to search Crow's saloon. He needed legal authority to act. Henderson sat behind his massive oak desk, fingers steepled, looking every bit the distinguished jurist. His silver hair was perfectly groomed. His suit was immaculate. "Sheriff Grant, I heard about the fire. Terrible tragedy. I need a search warrant for Aldrich Crow's establishment." Henderson's expression didn't change. "On what grounds? Human trafficking, illegal debt bondage, assault. Evidence? Witness testimony. From the woman you're harboring." Henderson's smile was thin. "A woman of questionable character, making accusations against a respected businessman. That's not evidence, Sheriff. That's slander. 8 women have disappeared. Women leave towns all the time. That's not a crime." Henderson leaned back in his chair. "Tom, you're a good man, but you're chasing ghosts. Let this go." Grant's hands clenched at his sides. "Can't do that, sir." "Then you'll do it without a warrant." Henderson's voice hardened. "And without my support. Be very careful what accusations you make. Sheriff, false charges carry consequences." As Grant left the courthouse, his mind racing, Henderson wasn't just refusing to help. He was protecting Crow. The question was, why? As Grant walked back toward Mrs. Stone's shop, he didn't notice the figure watching from the alley. Deputy Martinez stood in the shadows, face twisted with an emotion between guilt and fear. His hand trembled as he pulled out a small notebook and scribbled a message. Within the hour, a street urchin would deliver it to Reverend Caleb Wright, and Wright would deliver it to Crow. The betrayal was in motion, though Grant didn't know it yet. The man he trusted most was the weapon aimed at his heart. Sarah woke before dawn with a thought that wouldn't leave her alone. "I need to go back to Tito," she told Grant over breakfast at Mrs. Stone's kitchen table. "To my father's house." Grant frowned. "That place has been abandoned for 5 years. What's there? Something I should have remembered sooner." Sarah's eyes were distant. "Papa used to say, 'Truth hides where power doesn't look.' I think he left something for me, something they didn't find." The McKenna house stood at the end of a forgotten road, half swallowed by desert scrub. Windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The porch sagged dangerously. 5 years of neglect had reduced what was once a proud home to a skeleton. Grant insisted on coming with her, his gun drawn as they approached. The door hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside, dust lay thick as snow. Animal tracks crossed the floor. A family of birds had nested in the ceiling beams. Sarah moved through the wreckage like a ghost, visiting her own grave. The parlor where she'd practiced piano. The kitchen where her father had taught her to make biscuits. All of it rotting now, reclaimed by time and weather. She stopped at the door to her father's study. This room had been his sanctuary, his thinking place. Sarah remembered bringing him coffee late at night, finding him hunched over documents by lamplight. The desk still stood against the far wall, warped and water-stained. Sarah ran her hand across its surface. And suddenly, she was 8 years old again. "Papa, why do you work so late?" Her father had looked up, his face tired but kind. "Because some things can't wait until morning. Sweetheart, justice doesn't keep regular hours. But you're the sheriff. Can't you make people wait? He'd pulled her onto his lap then, holding her close. The badge doesn't make me special. Sarah, it makes me responsible for this town, for the people who can't protect themselves. He'd pointed to the wall behind his desk. If something ever happens to me, remember, this truth hides where power doesn't look. The powerful always check the obvious places. So you hide important things where they'd never think to search. Sarah blinked back tears, the memory sharp as broken glass. She turned to the wall her father had indicated. It looked like any other wall, plaster and wood, cracked with age. But when she pressed on a specific board, something clicked. A section of wall swung inward, revealing a narrow cavity. Grant stared. I'll be damned. Inside the hiding place sat a leather satchel, remarkably well preserved. Sarah lifted it with shaking hands and carried it to the desk. When she opened it, a breath she'd been holding for 5 years finally released. A ledger, letters, and a spent bullet in a small cloth bag. Grant spread the contents across the desk. The ledger's pages were covered in her father's precise handwriting, names, dates, amounts of money, destinations. Mary Thornton, sold to buyer in El Paso, $50. Grant's voice was hollow as he read. Elizabeth Carr, California, $75. Rebecca Martinez, Mexico, $100. 47 names in total, 8 years of trafficking, meticulously documented. Your father was building a case, Grant said. This is evidence, real evidence. The names in the ledger formed a pattern. 3 appeared repeatedly as facilitators. Aldrich Crow, obviously Reverend Caleb Wright, which made Grant's stomach turn, and someone identified only as B.H. Bartholomew Henderson, Sarah whispered. The judge. Grant's hands tightened on the ledger. We suspected. But this. Sarah picked up one of the letters. It was addressed to the territorial governor, dated a week before her father's death. She read aloud, Sir, I write to report a criminal conspiracy operating within my jurisdiction. For at least 8 years, a trafficking ring has been operating with the protection of local officials. I have documented 47 victims. I have evidence of bribes paid to a sitting judge. I request immediate assistance from territorial law enforcement, as I believe my investigation has been compromised. Time is of the essence. Lives are at stake. Respectfully, Sheriff James McKenna. The letter had never been sent. It still sat in its envelope, sealed and stamped, waiting for a mailbox it never reached. Someone intercepted it, Grant said. Your father tried to go over Henderson's head, and they killed him for it. Sarah lifted the small cloth bag. Inside was a bullet, its brass casing tarnished with age. This was in my father's body. I heard Doc Walsh talking about it at the funeral. He said it was an unusual caliber, custom-made. Grant examined the bullet, and his blood ran cold. Engraved on the base were 2 tiny letters, B.H. Henderson gave Crow custom ammunition as a gift 6 years ago. Grant said slowly, I remember, because Crow bragged about it, said the judge had them made special. The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. Henderson had discovered McKenna's investigation. He'd ordered the killing, and then he'd covered it up, ruling McKenna's death an accident, a drunken fall down the courthouse steps. James McKenna had never touched alcohol in his life. Sarah sank into her father's old chair, and it creaked under her weight. I was 17 when he died. They came the next day with papers saying Papa owed money on the house, debts I'd never heard of. They gave me a week to pay or leave. Fabricated debts, Grant said, to get you out. I went to Denver, tried to start over, but I was alone, broke, desperate. Her voice was barely audible. When a man offered me a teaching job back here, I thought it was fate. A chance to come home to find out what really happened to Papa. But it was a trap. They didn't recognize me. I'd lost weight, cut my hair, got older. I was just another girl they could use and discard. Sarah's laugh was bitter. For 3 years, I've been living in the same town where my father was murdered, and nobody knew who I was. Grant knelt beside her chair, and when he spoke, his voice broke. James McKenna was my friend. He was a good man, the best sheriff this town ever had. And when he died, I accepted the story. I didn't question. I didn't investigate. Tears streamed down his weathered face. I failed him, Sarah, and I failed you. I'm so sorry. Sarah touched his shoulder, and in that moment, something shifted between them. Not romance, something deeper. A shared grief, a shared purpose. You didn't know, she said, but now we do, and we finish what he started. They packed the evidence carefully, but Grant's mind was already racing ahead. We can't take this to Henderson. He'll destroy it. Then we don't go through official channels, Sarah said. We go directly to the source. What are you proposing? I go back to the saloon. Let Crow recapture me. You and Martinez follow. Stage a rescue. Catch them in the act. Her eyes were hard. We get the other women out. We get Crow to talk. We bring the whole thing down. Absolutely not. Grant stood abruptly. You're not putting yourself in danger again. I'm already in danger. We all are. Sarah rose to face him. But I know that building. I know where they keep the girls. I know the guard rotations. I know which floorboards creak and which windows don't lock properly. You need me. If something happens to you, then you will have failed twice. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Or you'll succeed once. Your choice, Sheriff. Grant wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in Mrs. Stone's cellar and handle this himself. But she was right. He needed her knowledge. And more than that, she deserved to be part of bringing down the men who destroyed her life. We do this smart, he finally said. Careful. Planned down to the minute. Agreed. They spent the rest of the day strategizing. Sarah drew a detailed map of the saloon's interior on a piece of paper, the main room, the back rooms, the basement where the women were kept. She marked the locations of guards, the times when Crow made his rounds, the moments when the building was most vulnerable. Grant added his own observations from years of watching the place from across the street. Together, they built a plan. Sarah would appear at the market the next afternoon. She'd let herself be seen. Crow's men would report back. That night, they'd come for her. She wouldn't resist. She'd let them take her to the saloon. Once inside, she'd signal from a second-floor window by lighting a candle. That would tell Grant the location of the other captives. Then Grant and Martinez would move in, quietly taking out the guards one by one. They'd free the women first, get them to safety. Then they'd confront Crow with the evidence and force a confession. Simple, Sarah said, though her hands trembled slightly as she folded the map. Simple plans have a way of getting complicated, Grant replied. But it's the best shot we have. That night, neither of them slept well. Grant cleaned his guns 3 times. Sarah paced Mrs. Stone's cellar, rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd act, preparing herself to walk back into the nightmare she'd barely escaped. But in the darkest hour before dawn, Sarah made her way upstairs and found Grant sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For believing me. For trying, Pa. My father would have liked that." She sat beside him. "He always said you were a good man. Tom Grant said if anything happened to him, I should trust you." Grant's throat tightened. He said that in one of his letters, I found it with the ledger. She pulled out a folded paper and handed it to him. Grant read, by starlight, James McKenna's final words to his daughter, included this line: "If you're reading this, I'm gone. But you're not alone. Find Tom Grant. He's stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery. But his heart's true. Trust him with your life. I do." Grant folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "I won't let him down again." "I know," Sarah said. "That's why we're going to win." The afternoon market bustled with its usual crowd. Farmers hawked vegetables. Children chased each other between stalls. And Sarah McKenna walked among them, deliberately visible, a lamb offering itself to wolves. She wore a borrowed dress from Mrs. Stone, simple but clean. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon. To anyone watching, she looked like just another woman shopping for supplies. But Sarah knew better. She felt eyes on her immediately. A man in a dirty coat leaned against the feed store, pretending to roll a cigarette. Another loitered near the butcher's stall, too interested in her movements to be a real customer. Crow's watchers. Exactly what she'd hoped for. Sarah took her time. She examined apples she had no intention of buying. She chatted with the baker's wife about nothing in particular. All the while, those eyes followed her. Good. Let them report back. Let Crow know his lost property had surfaced from across the street. Grant watched through the window of the land office, his stomach in knots. Every instinct screamed at him to pull Sarah out, to abandon this insane plan. But she'd been right. This was the only way. Deputy Martinez stood beside him, equally tense. "She's brave," he said quietly. "Braver than most men I know." Grant grunted agreement, not trust his voice. By sunset, Sarah had returned to Mrs. Stone's. Now came the waiting. Grant and Martinez positioned themselves in the alley behind the saloon, hidden in shadows, weapons ready. Night fell like a curtain. The saloon filled with its usual patrons, cowboys, drifters, men looking to forget their troubles in whiskey and cards. Piano music drifted through the walls, laughter, the sounds of a normal evening. Then, near midnight, movement. 3 men left through the back door, moving with purpose. They headed straight for Mrs. Stone's shop. Grant and Martinez followed at a distance, keeping to the darkness. The men didn't knock. They kicked in the back door. There were shouts, the sound of furniture breaking. Then they emerged, dragging Sarah between them. She didn't fight. She'd made herself dead weight, forcing them to carry hers, but she wasn't resisting. This was the plan, but watching it unfold made Grant's blood boil. They hauled her back to the saloon through the rear entrance, away from prying eyes. Grant gave them a 2-minute head start, then followed. Martinez stayed outside, watching for additional threats inside. Sarah was dragged past the main room and down a narrow staircase. The basement. She described it perfectly: earthen floor, brick walls, the smell of damp and despair. But seeing it was different from imagining it, the guard shoved her into a room and slammed the door. Sarah stumbled, catching herself against the wall. When her eyes adjusted to the dim lamplight, her heart sank. 6 women sat chained along the far wall. They ranged in age from maybe 16 to 30. Some watched her with dead eyes. Others wouldn't look up at all. They'd learned that hope was dangerous. But one girl, young, dark-haired, with features that struck Sarah like a punch, lifted her head. "Who are you?" "Sarah." "What's your name?" "Rebecca." The girl's voice was hoarse. "Rebecca Martinez." Sarah's breath caught. The resemblance to Deputy Martinez was unmistakable. Same dark eyes, same stubborn set to the jaw. This was his sister. The sister he'd been told was dead. "How long have you been here?" Sarah asked gently. 3 years, maybe longer. Hard to keep track. Rebecca's chains clinked as she shifted. "They said they'd let me go if I was good. They lied." Before Sarah could respond, heavy footsteps descended the stairs. The door crashed open. Aldrich Crow filled the doorway, his bulk blocking any escape. His face was flushed with whiskey and rage. "Well, well, the runaway returns." He stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind him. "You cost me a lot of money, McGirl. Time to settle accounts." Sarah backed against the wall, but kept her voice steady. "What are you going to do?" "Beat me." "You've already done that." "Oh, I got better plans." Crow's smile was ugly. "See, you and your friends here got a train to catch tomorrow night. Got buyers in Mexico who pay top dollar for fresh merchandise, especially troublemakers. They know how to break spirits down there." Tomorrow night? Sarah's mind raced. Less than 24 hours. That's right. So you got 1 day left in American soil. Make peace with whatever God you pray to. Crow turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and that sheriff who's been sniffing around, he'll find you gone and won't be able to do a damn thing about it. By the time he figures out where you went, you'll be somebody else's problem." He left, the lock clicking into place. Sarah waited until his footsteps faded, then pulled the small knife she'd hidden in her boot. She'd lifted it from Mrs. Stone's kitchen, and the elderly woman had pretended not to notice. Within minutes, she'd picked the lock on her chains. The other women stared in amazement. "Can you get us out?" one whispered. "Not yet," Sarah said, moving to the small window high on the wall. "But soon? I just need a signal." She struck a match and lit the candle she'd tucked in her other boot. The flame flickered in the window, visible from the alley outside. One, the signal. Grant would see it. Now they waited. An hour passed, then another. The women dozed fitfully, except Rebecca, who watched Sarah with growing hope. "You're really going to get us out?" she asked. "I promise," Sarah said, and meant it. At 1 in the morning, Sarah heard it. The soft creak of the back door opening, footsteps, careful and deliberate, then silence. The saloon had mostly cleared out. A few drunks slept at tables upstairs. The bartender had gone home. Only 2 guards remained, both half asleep. Grant moved through the darkness like a ghost. Martinez entered from the front, weapon drawn. They'd practiced this, rehearsed it. Each knew his role. The first guard never knew what hit him. Grant's pistol butt to the skull dropped him silently. Martinez took out the second with similar efficiency. They bound and gagged both men, then descended to the basement. Grant picked the lock, a skill James McKenna had taught him years ago, and eased the door open. Sarah stood ready. The other women behind her. 6 total, she whispered. One of them is Rebecca. Martinez pushed past Grant, his voice breaking. Becca, is that really you? The young woman looked up, eyes widening. Lucas? Oh, God, Lucas! He rushed to her, fumbling with her chains. They told me you were dead. They said you drowned in the river. I believed them. I mourned you. His voice cut off. As the chains fell away, Rebecca threw her arms around him, sobbing. But something was off. Grant noticed it too. Martinez's embrace was stiff. His eyes were wide with something that looked more like fear than joy. Lucas, Rebecca pulled back. What's wrong? Nothing. Nothing. I'm just... He couldn't finish. His hands shook. We need to move, Grant said sharply. Get them out, through the back. Martinez, you take point. They filed up the stairs, one by one. Sarah helped the weaker women. Grant kept his gun trained on the hallway, ready for trouble. They'd almost reached the door when Crow appeared at the top of the stairs, gun in hand. Thought you'd be smarter than this. Sheriff? Grant fired first. His bullet caught Crow in the shoulder, spinning him around. The man's gun clattered to the floor. Grant kicked it away, pressing his own weapon to Crow's head. On the ground, now. Crow dropped, cursing, clutching his wounded shoulder. You're dead, both of you. Henderson will see to it. Henderson's next, Grant said, and you're going to help us bring him down. Sarah emerged from the basement, helping the last woman up. When she saw Crow on the ground, bleeding and beaten, something fierce lit in her eyes. This was the man who tortured her, owned her, nearly destroyed her, and he was finished. Grant hauled Crow to his feet. Let's go, nice and slow. Outside, Martinez had gotten the women to safety behind the general store. But when Grant emerged with Sarah and Crow, he noticed his deputy hanging back, separate from the group. Rebecca kept trying to approach him, but Martinez wouldn't meet her eyes. Sarah saw it too. The deputy's face was pale, his hands trembling. This wasn't the reaction of a man reunited with a lost sister. This was guilt, terror, the look of someone whose lies were about to catch up with him. Lucas, Grant said slowly. Is there something you need to tell me? Martinez opened his mouth, closed it. His gun hand drifted to his holster, then fell away. And in that moment of hesitation, Grant understood. The reports that had been filed too quickly, the investigations that had gone nowhere, the warnings not to dig too deep. His most trusted deputy had been feeding information to Crow all along. Lucas, Grant said again, his voice cold now. Tell me I'm wrong. Martinez's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him like water from a broken bucket. I can't, Rebecca gasped. Lucas, what's he talking about? Tell them, Grant commanded. Tell them what you've done. Martinez looked at his sister, then at the ground. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. 3 years ago, Crow came to me, said he had Becca, said she was alive, being held somewhere safe if I cooperated, answered his questions, told him what the sheriff was investigating, he'd let her go. You've been the leak this whole time. Grant's hands clenched into fists. Every investigation that went nowhere, every warning I got to back off, that was you? I thought I was saving her." Martinez's voice cracked. "He showed me letters, things only Becca would know. He said if I didn't help, she'd be sold to the worst kind of buyers. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to trust me," Grant roared. "We could have found her together. Instead, you've been protecting the men who took her." Sarah watched the deputy crumble. Despite everything, she felt a stab of pity. Croce had used the same weapon on Martinez that he'd used on all of them. Hope twisted into chains. "They lied to you," she said quietly. "Your sister has been in that basement for 3 years. Crow never intended to release her." Martinez looked at Rebecca, finally meeting her eyes. The devastation on his face was complete. "You were here the whole time in the same building where I reported for meetings with Crow." Rebecca's tears fell silent. "I heard your voice sometimes, upstairs. I screamed your name, but no one came." "Oh, God." Martinez sank to his knees. "Becca, I'm so sorry. I thought I was saving you, but I was helping them keep you. You helped them keep all of us." One of the other women said bitterly, "How many investigations did you kill? How many of us stayed trapped because of you?" Grant's jaw worked. His deputy, his friend. 8 years of trust shattered. James McKenna trusted you. He trained you. And you. "I didn't know about Sheriff McKenna." Martinez's head shot up. "I swear, when they killed him, I wasn't part of it yet. That came later, after Becca disappeared. But you knew," Sarah said. "Eventually. You figured it out. You knew they'd murdered my father, and you said nothing." Martinez had no answer for that. Because it was true. Before anyone could say more, a sound froze them all. Horses, multiple riders, approaching fast. Grant grabbed Crow, pressing the gun to his head. "Who'd you alert?" "Wasn't me. Must have been the good Reverend. Henderson keeps him on a short leash." Crow's smile was bloody. "You're surrounded, Sheriff. Might as well surrender now." 10 riders materialized from the darkness, forming a semicircle around them. Professional gunmen, not local thugs, but hired killers. They sat their horses with the easy confidence of men who'd done this before. Behind them rode Reverend Caleb Wright, his face grim. "Put down your weapons. Sheriff Grant, Judge Henderson's orders." "Henderson doesn't give orders to the law," Grant said. "I give them. Not anymore." Wright's horse stepped forward. "The judge has declared you unfit for duty, consorting with criminals, harboring fugitives. As of tonight, you're relieved of your badge." "On whose authority?" "Mine." As Judge Bartholomew Henderson emerged from the shadows on a black mare, looking every inch the righteous arbiter. His silver hair caught the moonlight. His voice rang with false authority. "Sheriff Grant, you're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, and destruction of private property." "That's a lie." Sarah stepped forward. "You're the criminal, you and Crow. You've been trafficking women for years. We have proof, my father's ledger, your custom bullets, everything." Henderson's expression didn't flicker. "The delusional claims of a prostitute hold no weight in my court. As for ledgers and bullets, I see none." "Do you, Reverend Wright?" "No, Your Honor, I see nothing." Because the evidence was still hidden at Mrs. Stone's, Grant had left it there for safekeeping, planning to retrieve it after the rescue. A mistake, a fatal one. "You have two choices, Sheriff," Henderson said. "Surrender peacefully or die resisting arrest. Either way, these women return to Mr. Crow's custody until their debts are satisfied." "Like hell," Grant growled. The gunmen raised their rifles, 10 against 2. With 6 traumatized women caught in the crossfire, the math was impossible. Sarah's mind raced. They were trapped. Unless, "Sheriff," Martinez said quietly. He'd gotten to his feet, hand on his gun. "Get them to Mrs. Stone's house, the back way, through the church cemetery. It's not blocked yet. Lucas, what are you? Just go!" Martinez drew his weapon and fired at the nearest gunman. The shot went wide deliberately, but it bought seconds. "Run!" Grant hesitated for only a heartbeat, then grabbed Sarah and Crow. "Move, everyone! Now!" The women scattered, running for the narrow gap between buildings. Grant dragged Crow with him, using the man as a human shield. Sarah helped Rebecca and the others, pushing them toward safety. Martinez stood alone in the street, firing methodically. He wasn't trying to kill anyone yet, just create chaos, buy time. His bullets sparked off cobblestones, shattered windows, sent horses rearing. "Stand down, deputy!" Henderson shouted. "You're under arrest, too. Arrest this." Martinez shot the lantern in Wright's hand. Oil splashed. Flames erupted. The Reverend's horse bolted, throwing him. The gunman returned fire. Martinez dove behind a water trough, bullets chewing through wood. He fired back. And this time, his aim was true. One rider fell, then another. But there were too many. A bullet caught Martinez in the leg. He stumbled, kept firing. Another hit his left arm. The gun slipped from his grip. He drew his backup pistol with his right hand. Blood streaming. Through the chaos, he saw Grant and the women reaching the church. Almost safe, almost there. A third bullet punched through Martinez's chest. He dropped to his knees, pistol falling. Blood bubbled at his lips. Across the square, Rebecca screamed his name. Grant turned back, started to run toward his deputy, but Martinez shook his head violently. "Get them out!" he choked. "Get them!" A final shot struck him in the heart. Lucas Martinez fell forward into the dust, his blood pooling black in the moonlight. Henderson's voice cut through the ringing silence. "Unfortunate, but necessary. Now, Sheriff Grant, you have witnessed the consequences of resistance. Surrender, or more people die tonight." Sarah pulled at Grant's arm. "Tom, we have to go. He died buying us time. Don't waste it." Grant stared at Martinez's body, at the deputy who'd betrayed him, saved him, and died for him, all in the space of minutes. There were no words for this, no easy categories of hero or villain, just a broken man who'd made terrible choices and paid the ultimate price trying to fix them. "Rebecca," Grant said hoarsely, "come on." "No, Lucas." The girl tried to run to her brother, but Sarah held her back. "He's gone, and if we don't leave now, his death means nothing." They fled through the cemetery, weaving between tombstones. Behind them, gunfire erupted again as Henderson's men gave chase. Bullets whined past. Grant returned fire blindly, just enough to keep them back. They burst into Mrs. Stone's back door. The elderly woman stood ready with her shotgun, face set hard. "Cellar," Grant commanded. "All of you, now." The women descended into darkness. Sarah helped Rebecca, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Crow, wounded and weakened, couldn't resist as Grant shoved him down the stairs. "Bar the door after us," Grant told Mrs. Stone. "Already planned on it, you stubborn fool." She squeezed his shoulder. James would be proud. Then they were underground, in the cramped cellar that smelled of earth and preserves. Grant wedged a support beam under the trapdoor. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy minutes. Minutes they needed to figure out how to survive the night. Above them, Henderson's men surrounded the building. They heard wood splintering as the front door was forced open. Footsteps, shouting, the methodical search of rooms in the darkness. Sarah found Grant's hand. His grip was iron, desperate. "Martinez is dead because of me," he whispered. "No," Sarah said firmly. "He's dead because he chose redemption over cowardice. That was his decision. Honor it by finishing what we started. How we're trapped. They'll find us eventually. Then we make them regret it." Sarah's voice was steel. "You still have Crow, and I still have my father's evidence. Henderson thinks he's won. Let's prove him wrong." In the suffocating darkness, surrounded by terrified women and hunted by killers, Tom Grant made a choice. He could surrender, beg for mercy, try to negotiate their lives, or he could fight. James McKenna had fought. Lucas Martinez had fought. And both had died for it. But they died standing, died swinging, died making a difference. Grant could do no less. "All right," he said. "Then we fight." Dawn broke over Redemption Springs with the town on edge. Henderson's men had eventually withdrawn from Mrs. Stone's shop, confident their quarry couldn't escape. They were wrong. The cellar had a second exit, a tunnel dug during the Civil War years, emerging behind the church. By sunrise, Grant had moved everyone to the church itself, barricading the doors. The building sat in the center of town, visible to everyone, a stage for the confrontation to come. Dr. Henry Walsh was the first to arrive, medical bag in hand. "Heard there was shooting last night. Heard Martinez is dead." He looked at Grant with something between accusation and respect. "What the hell is happening? Tom, justice." Grant said, "Finally, but I need your help." Within an hour, word had spread. A crowd gathered in the town square, drawn by curiosity and fear. When Henderson arrived with his remaining gunmen, he found not a cornered sheriff, but a public assembly. Grant stood on the church steps, Crow bound beside him, the rescued women behind him. Sarah stood at his shoulder, chin high despite her fear. "People of Redemption Springs," Grant's voice carried across the square, "you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening in this town, about the corruption that's poisoned us for years." Henderson urged his horse forward. "This man is a fugitive. He has no authority." "Then let's have a trial," Mrs. Stone called out. The old woman stood with her shotgun. "Right here, right now, public and proper. Unless you got something to hide, Judge Henderson." The crowd murmured agreement. Henderson's face darkened, but he was trapped. To refuse would confirm guilt. To proceed risked exposure. "Very well," he said coldly. "But this farce changes nothing." Townspeople filed into the church, packing the pews. Henderson sat in the front row, projecting confidence. His remaining gunmen stationed themselves at the doors. Grant kept Crow at the front, visible to all. "Aldrich Crow," Grant began, You're accused of kidnapping, human trafficking, and murder. How do you plead?" Crow's shoulder was bandaged, his face pale from blood loss, but his eyes held calculation. He was weighing options, looking for an escape. "I want a deal." He said. "Reduced sentence. I'll tell you everything." "Tell us now. We'll discuss deals after." Crow nodded slowly. "I've been running girls through Redemption Springs for 8 years, bringing them in with false promises, keeping them with fake debts, selling them when they got a troublesome 47 women, maybe more. I lost count." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people looked skeptical, others horrified. "And you did this alone?" Grant pressed. "No, had help, protection." Crow's eyes flicked to Henderson. "High-level protection. Name them." "I do that. I'm dead before I reach a cell." Henderson stood. "Your Honor, I mean, Sheriff Grant, this man is lying to save his skin. He's a known criminal making wild accusations." "Sit down, Bartholomew," Mrs. Stone said. "Let the man finish." The judge sat, but his hand moved subtly toward his coat. Grant noticed. The man was armed and getting desperate. Sarah stepped forward before Grant could continue, her heart hammered. But her voice was steady. "I'd like to testify." The crowd studied her, a woman in borrowed clothes, bearing the faded marks of violence. To many, she was just what Henderson had called her, a woman of questionable character. "State your name," Grant said formally. "My name is Sarah McKenna." She let the name hang in the air. "I am the daughter of Sheriff James McKenna." The church erupted joy. James McKenna had been beloved. His death 5 years ago had been ruled an accident, but it had broken something in the town. Now his daughter stood before them, alive but clearly marked by suffering. "That's impossible," Henderson said. "James McKenna's daughter left town after his death." "I was driven out," Sarah interrupted, "with false debt claims, papers that said my father owed money he never borrowed. I had no money, no family, nowhere to go. So I left." She turned to face the crowd. 2 years later, a man offered me a job, teaching position. He said, good pay. When I arrived back here, I learned the truth. There was no teaching job, just debt, just chains. Mrs. Stone stood. "I delivered Sarah McKenna 29 years ago. I'd know her anywhere, even after what she's been through. This is James McKenna's daughter." DeWalsh rose. "I treated her father the night he died. His injuries were consistent with a fall, but I always had doubts. The angle was wrong. The wounds didn't match the story. One by one, older townspeople who remembered Sarah as a child confirmed her identity. Henderson's face grew darker with each testimony. "Even if this woman is who she claims," the judge said, "it doesn't prove anything about me." "Then let's talk about evidence." Grant retrieved the leather satchel from behind the pulpit. James McKenna was building a case against a trafficking ring. He documented everything: names, dates, money transfers. He opened the ledger, reading aloud the names of women who'd vanished, the destinations, the prices, and repeatedly the initials BHAMASH, facilitating transactions. "Initials prove nothing," Henderson said, but sweat beaded his forehead. "Then let's discuss this." Grant held up the small cloth bag. "A bullet, Removed from James McKenna's body by Dr. Walsh, a custom bullet, unusual caliber. DeWalsh nodded confirmation. I kept it. Seemed wrong to destroy evidence. Even if the judge ruled the death accidental. Grant opened the bag, holding the bullet to the light. Engraved on the base, 2 letters, base H. The crowd leaned forward, squinting. Those close enough confirmed it. Henderson's initials, stamped in brass. 6 years ago, Grant continued, Judge Henderson gifted Aldrich Crowe a box of custom ammunition. I remember because Crowe bragged about it for weeks. Very distinctive, very traceable. That's circumstantial. Henderson was on his feet now. Someone could have stolen. There's more? Sarah's voice cut through his protest. She held up a small object, a ring, gold and simple, with an inscription inside. This belonged to Mary Grant, the sheriff's late wife. Grant stared. How do you have Mary's ring? I found it 3 years ago. I was cleaning offices at night, trying to earn extra money to pay down my debt. I cleaned Judge Henderson's office. Sarah's eyes locked on the judge. The ring was in his desk drawer, bottom left, hidden under papers. The color drained from Henderson's face. I didn't understand then, Sarah continued, but I kept it. Something told me it was important, that someone had taken it from Mary Grant, that it shouldn't be in a judge's locked desk. Grant took the ring with trembling hands. He'd searched for it after Mary died, had assumed she'd lost it before her final illness. Now, holding it again, understanding dawned like a hammer blow. Mary didn't die of natural causes, he said, voice breaking. She was poisoned. You poisoned her. That's insane. Henderson backed toward the door. The woman died of fever. My wife never got fevers. She was healthy as a horse. Grant's fury was cold, controlled. But she'd been acting strange those last weeks. Said she'd seen something, documents in your office. She wanted to tell me about them, but you got to her first. Sarah spoke quietly. Mary Grant discovered the trafficking records. She was going to expose everything, so Henderson poisoned her, made it look like illness. Then he took her ring as a trophy. The crowd's mood shifted from confused to furious. A man who'd traffic women was despicable. A man who'd murder another man's wife was something worse, something unforgivable. Henderson drew his pistol. I'm leaving. Anyone who tries to stop me dies. But he'd miscalculated. The gunmen at the doors didn't move to help him. They'd been paid to intimidate, not to die for a judge who poisoned women. When Henderson looked to them for support, they looked away. It's over, Bartholomew, Grant said. Put down the gun. You have no proof, Henderson's voice cracked. Initials and a ring that won't convict me. Then add my testimony. Reverend Wright stepped forward, face anguished. I'll testify. I was part of it. Henderson forced me. No, that's a lie. He paid me. I took money to stay quiet, to provide cover, to help move women through my church. He looked at the crowd, tears streaming. I am complicit in evil. I confess it before God and this community. The dam broke. Others came forward. The blacksmith who'd seen suspicious wagons. The postmaster who'd intercepted letters. Small corruptions, small silences, adding up to monstrous evil. And through it all, Henderson stood frozen, his grand design collapsing around him. Finally, He lowered the gun. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," Grant said. "A real one, not in your pocket, and you'll stand trial in the territorial court, not your own." Two men from the crowd came forward, taking Henderson's weapon and binding his hands. The judge, who'd ruled Redemption Springs with an iron fist, was now just another prisoner. Grant turned to the crowd. "I failed this town, failed to see what was happening, failed to investigate when I should have. James McKenna tried to stop this, and I didn't help him. Lucas Martinez tried to save his sister, and I didn't know she needed saving. I'm sorry. I'm deeply, terribly sorry." "You're making it right now," Mrs. Stone said. "That's what matters." The church emptied slowly, townspeople processing what they'd learned. Some wept, others raged. All of them were changed by the truth. Sarah stood beside Grant, watching the sun rise higher. "We did it," she said. "Papa's case is finally closed." "No," Grant replied. "It's finally open, the way it should have been 5 years ago." Henderson and Crow were transferred to the territorial prison within 2 days. Reverend Wright attempted to flee, but was apprehended at the Mexican border by federal marshals. The territorial governor, shocked by the evidence, ordered a full investigation into corruption throughout the county. The 6 rescued women began the slow process of healing. Dr. Walsh treated their physical wounds free of charge, though he acknowledged the deeper scars would take far longer to fade. Rebecca Martinez was reunited with her parents, who'd spent 3 years believing their daughter dead. Their joy was tempered by grief for their son, but they held Rebecca like she was made of glass, grateful for the miracle of her survival. The town held a public gathering where officials formally apologized to Sarah and the other victims. It wasn't enough, but words could never be enough, but it was a start, a recognition that they'd failed to protect the vulnerable, and a promise to do better. Mrs. Stone and Dr. Walsh were honored for their courage in standing against power, when it would have been easier to stay silent. The old woman dismissed the praise with characteristic gruffness, but Grant saw her wipe away tears when no one was watching. 2 weeks after the confrontation, as bureaucrats and lawyers swarmed the town documenting evidence, Grant and Sarah slipped away early one morning. They rode together to the cemetery on the hill overlooking Redemption Springs. 2 graves stood side by side, though they'd been dug 5 years apart. James McKenna and Mary Grant, strangers in life, united now by the evil that had taken them both. Grant dismounted slowly, his movements heavy with emotion. Sarah carried wildflowers she'd picked that morning, desert blooms that somehow thrived in the harsh soil. She knelt at her father's grave first, placing half the flowers on the weathered stone. "I'm sorry it took so long, Papa," she whispered, "but it's done now. Henderson will answer for what he did to you, to Mary, to all of us." Her fingers traced the carved letters of his name. "I miss you every day. I miss who I was when you were alive. That girl who believed the world was fair, who thought sheriffs and judges were always the good guys." She smiled sadly. "But you taught me to be strong, and I was. Even when I didn't want to be, even when I wanted to give up." Grant placed his flowers on Mary's grave, his throat tight. "I'm sorry, Mary. Sorry I didn't see what Henderson was. Sorry I didn't protect you." His voice broke. "You tried to tell me something was wrong. I should have listened, should have investigated. Instead, I just buried you and stopped living." He pressed his palm to the cold stone. "But I'm trying now, trying to be the man you believed I was, the man James believed I was." He glanced at Sarah. "His daughter came back, finished what he started. I think you'd like her. She's got his courage, his determination. She saved me. Mary saved this whole town." Sarah joined him at Mary's grave, adding her remaining flowers. "I never knew you," she said softly, "but Tom loved you. My father respected you. That's enough for me." She paused. "I found your ring. I'm sorry it took so long to bring it home." They stood together in the morning, quiet. Two people who'd lost everything learning how to live again. Finally, Sarah spoke. "What will you do now when this is all over?" Grant considered. "Stay. This town needs rebuilding. Not just the laws, the trust, the community. Someone has to do it." He looked at her. "What about you? You're free now. You could go anywhere." "I could," Sarah agreed. "But where would I go? This is my home. It always was." She turned to face him fully. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't work yourself to death." "Is that so?" "That's so." She smiled, the first real smile Grant had seen on her face. It transformed her, showing glimpses of the girl she'd been. "Your house needs life. Your coffee needs improvement. And you need someone to tell you when you're being a stubborn mule." Grant laughed, the sound rusty, but genuine. "All right, then. Stay, please. I will, but not as—" She searched for the right words. "Not as anything rushed. I need time to heal, to figure out who Sarah McKenna is now. Take all the time you need. The house has room, no expectations, just—" He struggled with emotion. "Just family, the kind you choose." "Family," Sarah echoed. "I'd like that." They walked back through the cemetery, and Sarah stopped at the church. "I want to start something here, a place for women who need help, education, job training, somewhere safe to rebuild their lives, like what those men promised you. But real this time." "Exactly." Her eyes lit with purpose. "Rebecca wants to help. Some of the other women, too. We could teach reading, arithmetic, practical skills, give women options beyond marriage or—" She didn't finish, but Grant understood. "I'll donate my land on the east side of town. There's a building there. Used to be a schoolhouse. It's yours." Within a month, Sarah's Center opened. It started small, just 3 rooms and a handful of students. But it grew. Women came from surrounding counties, seeking education and refuge. Sarah taught with the same fierce determination she'd shown fighting Crow. She taught women to read, to cipher, to defend themselves, to recognize manipulation and refuse it. Rebecca Martinez became her first assistant teacher, finding purpose in helping others escape the fate she'd endured. The other rescued women gradually found their footing too, some staying, others moving on to fresh starts elsewhere. Grant watched the transformation with quiet pride. The town was changing. Slowly but surely, new laws were passed protecting workers from predatory debt. The territorial government appointed an independent investigator to audit all of Henderson's past rulings. Dozens of cases were reopened, injustices corrected. Grant himself was formally elected sheriff by popular vote. No longer just filling a dead man's shoes, but earning the badge on his own merits. His house, once a mausoleum, became something else. Sarah planted flowers in the yard, the same wild blooms that grew at the cemetery. She cooked meals that filled the rooms with warmth. She argued with him about politics and procedure, challenging him to be better, think deeper, try harder. They weren't romantic. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But they were family. And that was enough. One evening, 6 months after the trial, they sat on the porch, watching sunset paint the desert gold. Dusty stood in the nearby corral, finally at peace. The house glowed with lamplight behind them. Laughter drifted from the women's center down the street. "Do you think Papa would be proud?" Sarah asked. Grant didn't hesitate. He'd be more than proud. He'd be at peace. "And Mary, do you think she forgives me for taking her place here?" "You're not taking her place. You're making your own." Grant's voice was gentle. "She'd want this house filled with life. She'd want me to keep going, and she'd want you to be happy." "I'm getting there," Sarah said, slowly. "That's all any of us can do, one day at a time." They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The desert answered, and two broken people, mending together, found something they'd both thought lost forever: hope. Now, I know what you might be thinking as this story comes to a close. Maybe you've been the one who needed saving at some point in your life, or maybe you've been the one doing the saving, reaching out when someone was drowning in darkness. Either way, I hope Sarah and Tom's journey reminds you of something important. Your past doesn't define your future, and it's never too late to start over. Sarah had every reason to give up. She'd lost her father, her innocence, 3 years of her life. But she chose to fight. Tom had buried himself in loneliness for a decade, convinced his purpose died with his wife. But Sarah's courage awakened something in him he thought was gone forever. That's what family does. The family we choose, not just the one we're born into. They saved each other by refusing to quit. Maybe you're sitting there tonight feeling alone, wondering if your best days are behind you. Let me tell you something. Redemption Springs isn't the only place where second chances happen. They happen wherever people choose hope over bitterness, action over surrender. So here's my question for you. Who in your life needs saving right now, and who might be waiting to save you if you just let them in? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story matters.